any time that you are ranking musicians, I think it is important to be explicitly clear what the criteria is that you are going to be ranking these musicians by. So for this list, this is not going to be the top 11 most technically gifted metal drummers. I kind of want to get ahead of the where's Mike Portnoy, where's Matt Gartzka comments, because while I do value technicality, I am also going to be considering a drummer's musicality, and by that I mean how interesting / creative are the beats and the fills that they play in the music that they do. Another stipulation with my list is that these are going to be drummers that are mostly from bands that I listen to a lot, which is another reason why there's not Portnoy or Gartzka. I just don't listen to a ton of Dream Theater or a ton of Animals as Leaders. And you know the drill with these kind of ranking videos, it's just my opinion, actually, F that. No, this is objectively, categorically, 100% the definitive top 11 metal drummers list, because I couldn't shorten it to just 10. So let's go. At number 11, I got Paul Bostaph. That's right. Everybody's least favorite Slayer drummer is my number 11 best metal drummer of all time, baby. Paul is usually the replacement drummer for the bands that he's played in. See Exodus, Testament, and most famously, of course, Slayer. And I think because he's usually the replacement drummer, his drumming gets overshadowed because of that. What I admire most about Paul is his professionalism. I mean, quite frankly, you have to be 10 toes on business to be able to play at the level that he does and also learn all the different material from all the different bands that he's been a part of.
Changing, never changing, why is it infinite evil that revolves around our universe?
Paul started out playing drums with the underrated thrash metal band Forbidden, and he definitely had a few shining moments, like on songs like Through Eyes of Glass and Infinite. But like I said before, he's most known for his work in Slayer. I think too many people write him off for the sole fact that he isn't Dave Lombardo.
I knew, as a fan, the standard that had been set, especially by Dave Lombardo. Man, if you sit down as a drummer of this band for the first time and you feel like you have nothing to prove, you're wrong. And I absolutely had something to prove, because I think every Slayer fan was like, wow, is this guy going to suck?
And what that tells me is that you people did not listen to Divine Intervention. Despite having the unenviable task of having to follow up one of the most iconic metal drummers and one of the most iconic metal bands ever, Paul met the challenge head on, and I think he absolutely nailed it. Case in point, see the opener for this album, Killing Fields. Number 10, I got Incubus. And no, I am not talking about the shitty alternative band. I am referring to Inquisition's kick-ass drummer. My favorite thing about Incubus is his creativity. Black metal drumming has a reputation for basically just being blast beats throughout the whole song with the occasional fill here or there. And don't get me wrong, does Incubus do that on a lot of songs? Of course. But sometimes he will alter traditional kind of blast beats to make it fit the song better. I would say, prime example of which, Nefarious Dismal Orations, you got the song Nocturnal Gatherings and Wicked Rites, where he's not actually playing a straight blast beat, he's kind of syncopating the rhythm to fit the riff better.
I am the one that is loving for right for the gathering of all eternity. Time, moon, and the blackest skies, I call upon your presence for wisdom. Now let us echo our voice.
If you listen closely, it's not just a straight blast, there's kind of like a shuffle or a stutter to it, How many other black metal drummers would have just played a straight blast beat throughout and wouldn't have even thought twice about it? All right, you want to know what makes Incubus special? Is that he uses his head. Us drummers, we're all evolving constantly. I'm sure in a few years we'll all be able to develop the ability to read. And no, I am not talking about sight-reading sheet music and playing it. I'm talking about the ABCs, which, by the way, that is a misleading name. There are way more letters in the alphabet than just the ABCs. I feel like I got set up, man. That was a rude awakening for me. I'm probably going to get held back again. Number 9, Mario Duplantier. He may not have a shirt, but he's still going to serve your ass. While Mario may not be top of my list, if we were judging this by a stage presence and live performance, Mario probably would be up at the top. He is just so full of energy and passion when he gets behind the kit on stage.
There is thousands and thousands of drummers way better than me in terms of technique. But I think what I try to create, it's like I give a lot of my soul and emotion into it. So I'm really on fire when I play drums, and my only rule when I go on stage is give something to people, inspire them.
And while Mario does kind of play down his technical ability in that interview, I think he's actually very technically proficient, and I think his best work in that regard came on Gojira's The Way of All Flesh. You know, the extremely odd syncopation of Toxic Garbage Island, you know, the polyrhythmic grooves on Esoteric Surgery, and of course the iconic drumming on the song The Art of Dying, which is allegedly in like 45/4 time.
What?
Mario also has his own YouTube channel where once a year he'll post like a new drum solo, and even though I play the drums, I don't really care too much for drum solos. I'm more interested like in beats and, you know, how people play along with music, but credit to Mario, he makes his drum solos. They're really cool and they're really, really interesting. Coming in at number 8, give me Martin Lopez, formerly of Opeth, I believe currently of Soin or something like that. But Martin is a very malleable drummer, and quite frankly, you kind of have to be to play in a band like Opeth, where one section of the song is death metal, the next section is folk music, and then the section after that is like jazz fusion. And what makes Martin so great is that he is willing to do things that no other drummers are willing to do, like use brushes. I played jazz band in high school, and anytime the teacher asked me if I wanted to use brushes for a song, I'd ask him if he'd like to meet the 38 Special in my backpack.
What's going on? Yo, you like the taste of steel? Keep your distance. Keep your distance.
Alright, I didn't actually say that. Mr. O, if you're watching this, you're the man. You rule. Martin is just a complete drummer, and I think he pulls out all the tricks in his bag on the Opeth song Deliverance, where, you know, straight away, super fast double bass to start off the song. You've got the kind of syncopated double bass rhythms that are like kind of Meshuggah-esque in the back half of the song. Although, my favorite bit of Martin's playing is when this song is in the clean section, and it's in 7. But Martin's playing is just so smooth, and he's just so locked into the pocket, that it doesn't sound like odd time at all. It sounds just like an even 4/4. Number 7, give me Dark Side from Migwa. In my opinion, probably the best drummer in contemporary black metal music. Dark Side is one of the most expressive drummers that I've ever heard in my life. I really love the cymbal embellishments that he does throughout the songs. I really think it adds to the ambiance and the atmosphere of the music. I know some people don't like when drummers get a little too busy with the fills and stuff, but in my opinion, I don't think Darkside ever gets like too obnoxious with his cymbal embellishments or anything like that. You know, it's nothing close to like how a shred guitar player will program drums for their shitty wank guitar song. To me, Darkside is kind of like black metal's answer to Elvin Jones, who was a famous jazz drummer who was known for being a very busy kind of drummer, but he was still always playing beats that worked in service of the music. And of course, can't talk about Darkside without mentioning the iconic drum part on Exercises in Futility 5. Number 6, give me Mickey D, who in typical drummer fashion can't even spell his own fucking name right. That looks like Mikey, not Mickey. Come on. One of my favorite things about Mickey D's playing is how he accents his ride cymbal. Kind of gives a bit of a swing feel to it, which is something that I wish more metal drummers would do and embrace, because there are a lot of times when they kind of just play straight eighths on the ride or something when they could opt to do something a little bit more interesting. Some examples of Mickey D's ride cymbal work, you got a Motorhead Sacrifice, and of course the iconic opening track to them, Welcome Home. Mickey D has a very rare combination of finesse and power. I think his best finesse playing came when he was working in King Diamond, but if you want the straight-ahead, pummeling, skin basher Mickey D, then you got to check out his work with Motorhead. I mean, there is a reason that Motorhead holds a record for being the loudest band in the world. Number 5, Dave Lombardo, the godfather of double bass drumming. Now, I don't know how many of you are drummers out there, but learning double bass is actually really hard. You will most likely not have linear progress. Maybe at first you can go, 90 BPM, 100 BPM, and then maybe at 120 you just hit a wall. And then you kind of just are stuck at that level for a while until you eventually move past it, slow and steady progress, then you hit another wall. And, just hitting these walls repeatedly is extremely frustrating when you're trying to learn. And there were times where I wondered if I even had the physical ability to be able to play at the speeds that Dave Lombardo does. Like, if I had never heard anyone else play double bass and I was, you gave me some bass pedals, I would have assumed it would be literally physically impossible to play at the speeds that Dave Lombardo plays at because he could just go so fast. And keep in mind, nowadays we have the benefit of, things like YouTube where you can watch tutorials. We also have the precedent of other drummers playing at wicked speed, so then it's possible. Dave Lombardo had neither of those things. Basically just kind of like in a vacuum, he developed a whole new way to play drums. And yes, I know Ginger Baker from Cream, might have been the first to actually have the double bass, but his geriatric ass couldn't play Angel of Death.
Why do you think all these people want to play with you? Or why do you think you can play with all these people?
I think a big part of it is being able to listen, on stage. Give the music its moment to shine instead of being a drummer that wants to outplay everyone else in the band or outplay every other drummer or outwit, out-chop every other drummer.
But Dave isn't just, a drummer that excels at playing double bass. He's actually very musically versatile. I used to watch some of his drum solos when I was younger, and he does not use his double bass speed as a crutch. Generally in his solos, he just kind of plays some grooves, some tasty fills. I mean, he will throw the double bass in there, of course, but it's, like I said, he doesn't use it as a crutch. And if you want some more proof of Dave's musical versatility, check out this clip of him playing to some Latin music. Coming in at number 4, Thomas Haka from Meshuggah. One of the very few drummers that is more prolific for what he does with his feet than with his hands. He forever cemented himself into a metal drumming history with the crazy foot patterns on Bleed. And while the band was trying to record that song, Thomas wasn't sure he would really be able to play it live or even play it in the studio. He was struggling with it for a while. It took him some months to work on it, and he ended up just completely changing his double bass technique, which to me just shows his dedication and professionalism.
Just basically had to kind of change my approach to how I played the bass drums, because I always used to just pummel really hard kind of, and only single strokes. And for this one, I don't play as hard on the kicks. Like some songs I kind of lean onto the pedals and I hit it really hard. But on this one, it's more, I kind of lean back more and you kind of keep your feet in the air and it's more like tap dancing. Like.
Thomas has more drumming highlights than just Bleed, however. You got the mind-melting rhythms of Stenga, the crazy-ass toms on Glint's Collide, and you cannot forget the snare drum madness on the song Nostrum. In addition to being a super sick drummer, Thomas also writes the lyrics for Meshuggah, so, you know, it's a little fun fact if you didn't know. Number 3, Gene Hoglan, a.k.a. the Atomic Clock, and probably, like, the greatest free agent metal drummer in all of metal history. Gene got his start as a roadie for Slayer, and I believe it was actually him who introduced Dave to double bass drumming, and, you know, we discussed how well that went. But as far as his first band, that would be thrash metal band Dark Angel, where not only did he play the drums, but I think he also did the songwriting. He was the band's manager. Like, he wore a lot of hats with this group. But his big break, the work that I think he's most known for, would be the drumming that he did while in Death on 1993's Individual Thought Patterns and 1995's Symbolic. You know, I think the way that he chooses to complement the music is very interesting, very creative. And I think the most unique song drumming-wise from this era would be Zero Tolerance. And the reason I say Gene is like the greatest free agent drummer in metal history is that he's just worked with so many bands. Like I said, there was Dark Angel, Death, Strapping Young Lad and Devin Townsend, Testament, Fear Factory, probably a whole bunch of other bands too. To me, Gene is like a drummer's drummer. You know what I mean? Like, he is one of the very few who would even attempt to try to play like a fusion jazz beat in a straight-ahead death metal song.
That's one thing that I've always tried to do is create beats that had yet to be heard, you know, or if you are utilizing a beat that might have been heard somewhere, make sure it's not necessarily a beat that's been heard in metal before. Hence a Steve Gadd Bembe beat, you know, a South American rhythm pattern. As far as I knew, nobody had tried that in metal or anything.
Number 2, Commando, Pete Sandoval, the Giga Chad of death metal drumming. Number 1, this dude always looks tough as hell in all the band pictures. Like, just look at that right there. Look at that look. Look at the chains. I mean, the aura is permeating through the picture. And number 2, Commando is a dog. All right? The guys in Morbid Angel, they tried to play a prank on him. They programmed a drum machine to play like a stupidly fast blast beat. And, you know, they acted like it was just some demo, and they show it to Pete, and like, oh, man, look how fast this guy is. You can't play that fast, Pete. And basically, in response to that, Pete just kept grinding and grinding his blast beats until he could play faster than that drum machine. You know, there are stories about, you know, when the band was in their rehearsal space, they would just see Commando Pete Sandoval just passed out behind the drum set in a pool of his own sweat from exhaustion because he'd been playing so much. And then they'd wake him up, be like, hey, Pete, are you okay? You okay? He would just get up, be like, oh, time to get back to work.
You know, I would practice without drums, of course, like in my house, you know, on a chair, you know, a pillow. I used to put a pillow and just pretend like I'm playing. So everything was by ear. I never learned how to play drums by, you know, I didn't go to school. I didn't have a teacher. I taught myself.
I think Pete being a self-taught drummer is what really helps give him a unique sound. You know, he'll play these really cool yet kind of atypical kind of fills and accents on the songs that just really let you know, yep, that is Commando Pete Sandoval behind the kit. You know, not every drummer is able to have an immediately discernible style in the same way that he does. I also love when he's like playing a crazy fill with his hands and he's still just going crazy on the double bass with his feet. I mean, every time he does that, you would have thought I've been camping the way that I pitch a tent. And for number 1 on my list, you know, this is a drummer I imagine a lot of you are familiar with. You know, I am a little bit embarrassed at how predictable, you know, this selection will be. But once I tell you who it is, it'll be literally impossible for you to argue with me and my supreme intellect.
With the first pick in the
Top 11 metal drummers of all time, Radon 666,
select
Lars Ulrich. Alright, so I was just joking with Lars. My real number 1 pick, I mean, who else but Danny Carey from Tool? Come on, people. To put it simply, Danny is a master of technicality, and to me, he's also the most musical drummer that I've ever heard. The way that he, like, uses the electronic pads to get all these unique drum sounds, you know, sometimes he, by himself, will, like, carry an entire song on his back.
Never wanted just to play beats, I always wanted to play the songs, and I think any good drummer plays music, he doesn't play beats. You know, you participate in the musical experience and anticipate the chord changes, anticipate the arrangements, and set things up. So it's a logical progression that when you go through a song, you know, people are prepared, and that's your job to kind of set up these nuances and the changes as the music progresses, you know, like lead people into the new space. You know.
Some examples are the songs like Right in Two, The Pot, Lateralis, and Reflection. And speaking for myself personally, I mean, Danny Carey's just my drumming idol. You know, sometimes I refer to my style of playing as Dollar Tree Danny Carey, because basically I just stole a whole bunch of his tricks. You know, like instead of just playing straight eighths in his beats, Danny likes to swing it a little bit, as do I. I spent 9 months just trying to wrap my head around what a polyrhythm even is because of Danny Carey. You know, I learned what an odd time signature is. I learned his signature 5-stroke cymbal roll where he's hitting the cymbals and you hear the snare roll in between. And I was like, this guy sounds like an octopus. How does he do that? Although I will admit, I didn't even attempt to learn the stuff he does with the electronic pads, like the tablas and the congas and shit. I don't know, anytime I heard him play that, I'm just like, fuck that. I ain't doing all that. And that's the thing about Danny Carey, is that learning his drum parts is like taking a calculus class. You know, the first section of a song might be an odd time, then the next section might be a polyrhythm, and then, you know, the final section, you know, you're keeping time with your left foot, playing a syncopated bass drum pattern with your right foot, and then the sticking pattern you're doing on the drums is probably something stupid like an inverted Swiss Army flam paradiddle diddle or something, I don't know. But yeah, I'll just stop myself there because I could probably talk about Danny Carey's drum parts for hours. So, you know, that is my top 11 metal drummers of all time. Don't leave a comment below. I actually don't give a shit what you think. I don't want to hear what your list is. No, I'm just kidding. I actually, you know, that could be fun. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to end the video here. And tax deadline, April 15th, people, all right? Don't forget to file your taxes.